The importance of having a process. Hello, welcome back to Real Estate Explained. I am Kyle Wong, local real estate agent here in Colorado. If you're joining me on YouTube, I think Spotify does this now too. You can actually see the visual. For those joining in, just listening to the audio, that's cool. But I have a really cool visual for this one. It's AI created. Anyway, okay, we're going to be talking about the importance of having a process in your real estate purchase. Today, I'm going to be talking specifically about the buy side of things and what that looks like on the purchase side. I would say specifically for first-time home buyers, but this is really for anybody, and I'll talk about why. So, first and foremost, why the right order matters. I'm actually going to talk through the process at a very high level overview, just glaze over the main topics and talk about why having a process, order, procedure, whatever you want to call it, matters so much. Okay. So again, I'm Kyle Wong, licensed realtor here. I want to break this down real simply for you because I do this as a job day in, day out. I see lots of transactions, lots of different people, lots of different types of homes, areas, all that stuff. So I'm just trying to explain this in a way that's real simple, explaining through why some other real estate agents might do the same thing or why you maybe as a real estate agent should be doing these things. We're looking for an agent that does. Okay. So first and foremost, when I have the initial call with a potential client, and again, people are not clients until we have an agency agreement. So when I have that initial call, I'm getting as much information as I possibly can. Part of it's building rapport. Part of that's just sales, right? Just getting somebody to trust you enough to work with you. But it's just getting information. So I'm trying to see where they're at in the timeline, what their motivation is for buying, what they're looking for, location, type of house, development, style, stuff like that. But yeah, it's really just getting information to see what they're going to be looking for, and then also if we would be a good fit. And depending on two primary points, so one would be timeline, and the second would be what they're looking for, I would suggest a buyer's consultation. And this isn't just a sales pitch to get you on some stupid Zoom meeting because I don't want to be on Zoom meetings either. Trust me. It's the reason for the buyer's consultation is two things. So one is to just whittle down the criteria a little bit further, right? Really identify what exactly they're looking for, specific areas. This is really, really important for people coming in from out of state, people that aren't as familiar with the area, or investors, right? People looking for specific things and they may not know the nitty-gritty details that may drastically affect their numbers. Those are really important. But the thing is, too, I think some people kind of put up their hands and like, I bought a house before, whatever. Even in Colorado, if they bought and sold a house before. Well, here's the thing. If we haven't worked with you before, it's important because here's how we do things. Here's how I, Kyle Wong, the real estate agent, do things, right? So here's how we as the Moxie Property Group operate and do business. Here's how it is to do this transaction in Colorado. And even if you've done this before, maybe things had changed. Maybe there are some rules or regulations or just nuanced market trends that have been happening that you just want to be up to date on. I mean, it's one of the biggest purchases, biggest financial obligations of people's lives. You want to have the best information, the most current information, the most in-depth. So that's why it's important. The second part of the buyer's consultation, again, very important if you haven't done this before so you can get your hand held. But for those reasons I just mentioned, it's walking you through the process from this conversation to actually closing and beyond. I think a lot of real estate agents or professionals kind of see it as the end once you close on the property. Yeah, and in a very real way, that is where it ends, just between us professionally. But there's so much more to consider, 6 months down the line, couple years down the line, right? What happens when you go to sell? The things that you learned on the buy side are going to be imperative on the sell side. So lots to consider there. So once we have the buyer's consultation, we talk to the lender. Of course, if you're not financing, this won't apply to you, although in probably say 8 times, 7 or 8 times out of 10, I'd recommend talking to a lender, just because even if you have the capital, and this does happen a lot, by the way, if you have, several hundred thousand, several $1 million set aside for a real estate purchase, which could be a good thing to do, is just buy cash, right? Buy it outright. Oftentimes, I recommend them talking to their accountant, talking to a lender, just to talk through the best options. That way, you have basically more options. You have freedom in that. If you don't want to tie up that much capital up front, you can work on good financing if it makes sense for you financially. And put a plan together. So having that conversation with your lender, and especially if you have to finance, if that's your only option, talking through strategy, talking through what numbers are going to look like, how to be prepared. And the reason why that's important is because, even if you're not prepared now, it's setting up a game plan to be prepared later. So again, all of these are very, very important steps, because to skip ahead just a little bit, so from step 3 to step 5, where you talk to a lender to go to write an offer, you actually need the pre-approval letter from the lender to submit the offer. It just shows the seller or the listing agent that you are financially prepared to make this commitment and that they should accept your offer. But to go back a little bit, once you have that conversation with your lender, get pre-approved, have your finances run, make sure you are set and prepared, then we start the home search. So lots of little details that go into that, but talking through certain options, once you whittle down some listings that you send me or I send you, we can just see what's on the market. I like to say we're keeping our finger on the pulse by seeing what's out, any market trends that have been happening, price changes, new listings, lack of listings, days on market, all of those things. You can see what's available in what condition, right? And then once you finally find an option or 2 or 3 that look good to you, you can whittle that down and then write up your offer. So again, with that offer come a few things. So one is the offer with your dates, deadlines, terms, and your outs. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're going to be financing, you need that pre-approval letter. Or even if you're cash, what most sellers, agents need to see, or sellers, is what's called a proof of fund letter. Basically just stating, your financial institution stating, hey, my client does have the financial means to submit this offer. We are good to go. Just for that peace of mind, just so that they know you're serious, right? And then the third thing is earnest money. This is a big hang up for a lot of people. This is not your down payment. This is not money you're throwing away to me or to anybody else. The earnest money, or some states call it escrow money, is a deposit of good faith, right? Or money in earnest. And all that means is, here in Colorado, we have title companies, is a neutral third party is holding the funds while you're under contract. And it's just money to show that you got skin in the game, that you're serious, right? Here in Colorado, if you fall out of contract for any reason, or I should say you pull out of the contract for any reason stated in the contract, you get your earnest money back. If not, that just rolls into your closing. Again, I say it's your money just being held by a third party. But most people, when they go to write an offer and their agent doesn't prepare them for that, they're like, why do I need to give $5,000 right after we just submitted the offer? Don't we close in 30 days? If you don't explain that, that can be very serious. One time I had a almost $2 million offer submitted, and this was pretty early on in my real estate career, and my client needed to wire $40,000 for the earnest money. And of course, it's a high dollar transaction, so they want a lot more skin in the game for this, so they don't fall out of contract. And so, you have to prepare your client to do that. Wiring $40,000 is not a small thing, and for a lot of people, wiring $5,000 is not a small thing. So you need to be prepared and know that ahead of time. And one other thing is, well, really, all of this matters because of step 6, right? Closing with confidence. I don't want to be looking at homes, and you probably don't want to either as my client, looking at homes, submitting offers on homes, losing out on things because you don't close. The purpose is for you to purchase a property. That's why we do all of this legwork up front. So if anything stops you from closing, that's a problem. We want to identify that beforehand, prepare, and actively fight against that so that we can close with confidence, right? So we go through all of these items to be sure that we're prepared, we're in the best scenario, we're familiar, we're comfortable, we're confident. So talking through in the buyer's consultation, fees associated, when you'd be expected to bring money to the table, what the proper timeline is, right? Most people have no problem with, most of my clients have no problem with the earnest money and down payment. And then sometimes you'll get questions that most people don't even think to ask, right? Like, when's my first mortgage payment? And typically, again, depends, and I'm not going to give you a hard and fast rule, but typically you see that first mortgage payment actually set in 2, sometimes 3 months after you close. So you do have a little bit of time to recoup some funds if that's a concern for you. So these are things that you need to know. The reason why this process is so important is it's your shield. You're protected, you're confident, you're in control of this. Like I said earlier, it's a huge investment, the biggest financial investment for most people. And it's also an emotional investment. When you're buying a home, you're shopping, you get outbid, there's an emotional toll that takes, the time that takes. People raise their families in their homes, they spend their lives in their homes, experience life in their homes. So it's a really big deal. And you don't want to be that person that's like, oh man, here's what I regretted when I bought my first home. Let's just do it right the first time. Let's not have any regrets. Let's put our money where it belongs, make proper investments, make smart moves. And I don't mean just for investors, right, where every dollar matters and this is for a money thing. But, whether you like it or not, you're spending money to live somewhere for the most part. Most people are. And when you buy a house or when you rent, it doesn't really matter. You're putting a lot of money into something. So when you buy a house, it is still an investment, and you want to be smart with that investment, protect that investment, be aware of your investment as much as you need to be. So the 3 biggest ones, I would say, I kind of covered these when I was talking through the process, but house hunting too soon. This is a big one. Oh, I'm just looking. I don't really want to talk to a realtor. Honestly, I get that. Lots of realtors are really obnoxious. Lenders, can be kind of the same thing. But there's a really good reason for that. When you just want to see what's out there and you start getting into things, I actually don't disagree with just looking at homes, looking at Zillow. That's often a precursor. How I know people are ready to have that conversation is they just start looking, or they're just curious. Nobody's really just curious for the most part. But when people actually start getting serious about seeing homes, it goes from, just attending open houses and model homes and stuff on the weekends for fun to actually looking at homes they're really interested in buying, and yet they have no idea where their finances are. Most people, unfortunately, are not super savvy with their money, and either they overspend or they just have no concept of... Sorry about that. Had to pause the recording. I got a phone call when my phone was on Do Not Disturb. I don't even know how that happens. Anyway, so yeah, looking at homes seriously, and most people don't even know what they can afford, right? They sometimes they can break it down to a monthly payment, but what exactly does that translate to in the current market, to a dollar amount for house, right? Most people have kind of guesstimates and rules and whatever, and unfortunately most of those are just so not true, because interest rates and local property tax and insurance, depending on certain areas, fluctuates. HOAs fluctuates that payment so much you really just have no idea. The same person could maybe afford a $300,000 house, whereas other conditions and certain things could make that $500,000, $600,000 house, believe it or not. So lots of things to know, lots of things to look out for. So house hunting too soon without at least consulting somebody about having that conversation about things to look out for, that's a big one. Ignoring the consultation. So again, like I said before, lots of people I reach out to, or actually reach out to me, just, oh no, just look in. I don't really need an agent. Let me just write an offer on the house, right? I see that a lot. I don't need to do a buyer's consultation. I've bought a house before. Let's just do it. Honestly, depending on the situation, sometimes that's fine, because I still walk my clients through the process in a less formalized way. But without going through that process and identifying timeline specifics for homes, like for example, here in Denver, you can have a very, very different experience with requirements, timelines, all that stuff, versus buying a home in the mountains, in the foothills, right? And I'm just thinking of an example, is maybe a septic tank with a leach field. Some counties actually require a septic use permit prior to transfer, prior to you purchasing. And if you don't know what the heck that process is, you might hear that and freak out. That's a big deal. And if anything goes wrong, that's an even bigger deal financially. So these are the things you want to know before you ever go under contract. I don't know why you would want to submit an offer with less information. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. But yeah, the other thing is lifestyle, long-term goals, other implications. Sometimes during hot markets, we saw this a lot during COVID. Litigation was wild, but you would see people go under contract 6 months later, hate the house. Then they resent their agent. They didn't prepare them. Sight unseen offers, inspection waived offers, all this stuff. And really, yeah, a lot of people did overpay for homes just because they're so caught up in the competition, so caught up in just winning the offer that they lost sight of what their goal actually was. Like, oh, we just wanted to buy a house in a certain area so that our kids could go to a certain school. Now we're way over our budget and we're in a place we don't even like, right? That's a problem. The other one is delaying lender talks. The other thing is, I like you, I like working with you. Let's, I like these areas. I'll talk to a lender later. Well, here's the thing. How do we know what properties we can and cannot look at, afford, if you don't even have a budget together? Most people don't have their personal finances or their budgeting together. So why would we go out and look at homes if you don't even know what you can afford, right? It's like having no idea what's in your bank account and yet going shopping. It doesn't make sense to do this with the biggest purchase of your life, where the down payment is significant usually, and the payments are usually the biggest payments you make as a person. So having that conversation and just getting an idea of what you need. And again, if the answer is no for right now, that's fine. Not one of those real estate agents like, well, let's find a way. We have to look. If you're in a position where the answer is just not yet, I mean, I'll help you figure out a way. I will use my professional services to help you and do what you want to do. But if the answer is like, you know what, man, it's pretty expensive, I just don't have the finances for that right now, I'm going to do another year in my lease and then we'll talk, or my income's increasing next year, or, job change, sure, whatever. But have that conversation before you really start shopping for a house, because you need to know, okay? That's it. I'm Kyle Wong, Moxie Property Group, local licensed real estate agent. It's crazy that I have to say that. I am licensed here in Colorado. So if you have any questions about the topics we talked about today, let me know using the link down below. I will talk to you soon.